Welcome, everybody. Today, we're going to be talking about why meta ads are failing and if meta ads are still the best way to scale your business. Before we jump into it, I'm going to give a quick introduction on us as an agency. And then we're going to jump right into it with a Q&A from Daniel from our team that has aggregated some of the main pain points that we get as an agency and some of the common recurring meta questions that we get. So before I kind of jump into it, Jorge and I, we're the founders of MediaJet Marketing. We've been scaling brands for about 7 years, not only on Meta, but full funnel. So we focus on Facebook, Google, and TikTok, as well as some additional ad channels from time to time. We also focus on retention marketing. So that dives heavily into email and SMS, as well as implementing subscription programs that increases lifetime value, or loyalty programs that keeps buyers around long term. On the last part of that, we focus on CRO. So making sure that our websites convert at the highest level for our clients. Campaigns change, seasonality changes, product offering changes when it comes to bundles or new product drops. And that needs to be met with a high converting landing destination. People like buying from experiences. So we need to match the ad experience with the landing page experience. That completes a full funnel, type of experience, which then increases your conversion rate and gives buyers the confidence that they need in order to actually trust your brand. So that full funnel approach is what we focus on, and we're going to be touching on today. We're going to be specifically trying to hone in on Meta. So we can jump right into it. And I'll stop screen sharing our website and kind of jump into the Q&A.
One thing here, like for preface real quick, me and Alan, we've been on 200 calls this year, with different e-commerce stores, and we get the same questions over and over again. That's where these questions are coming from. So we're let's just put this together and put a video out there. It would probably help a lot of stores.
Yep. Thanks, Al. So basically, we've been on a ton of client calls, and all of these questions keep coming up. So yeah, question number one is, Meta used to print money. What happened to it? So if you guys can give us clarity as to what changed, I think that's a good segue to begin this conversation.
I can start on this one, and then Al, feel free to chip in. But yeah, I would say it really depends on who's asking the question, what type of business, what type of store, whether it's on Shopify or really what their unit economics look like. And I would say when it comes to high ticket stores, high ticket items, high LTV items, we rarely get this question, if ever. I think, there's a lot of brands that we work with, that also brands we've just come across through many events that we go to, that have just kind of had resilient strategies, right? And as Meta's rolled out all these different features, it's in a way just been more business as usual. But there is a ton of brands that are affected. I think if you fall into the low AOV single purchase, of course things have changed massively, right? So I think it depends on who's asking the question. And what we've seen most common is a lot of those low AOV single purchase brands have evolved their brands into not being that, right? How do we extract more revenue out of these customers? How do we add additional products, or moving to different channels like TikTok Shop, or Amazon, where single purchase is still very lucrative, right? But yeah, anything to add, Al?
Yeah, I think we need to focus on owning our data. I think that's one of the things that we focus on as an agency, and want to make sure that everything we talk about today is actionable and it's something that you guys can implement as founders immediately, right? So one thing that I would recommend here is brands that have marketing experience, maybe even prior to Meta, are not affected because they own their email, they own their customers, they understand the concept of lifetime value and why, offers that are so attractive that are almost irresistible to pass up are important. You can't just run an ad without any urgency and without any incentive for the buyer to make that purchase quickly. So I would say that's another thing that changed, in which now you need to be more intentional with your marketing. And some of the things that we've all seen on TV 10 years ago that used to be like kind of funky about, add one more and the price goes in half and like all these things that they created urgency. The conversion needed to be made immediately because it's on TV. Some of the brands that have brought those elements into meta advertising are winning. Because either they're getting that or they're getting an email. You're either getting a conversion immediately or you're getting an email, which then allows you to own your data and convert later on. Some of the purchase behavior that we've seen is that customers are disloyal. Like there's so many brands available. There's brands being launched at all times, especially with TikTok Shop and all these channels that are making it very easy for sellers to come out. The brands that are going to make it have marketing engines that own their data and that they can capture customers and almost build a brand loyalty that lasts long term. So that's what I would say. And I guess that being said, we can wrap it up and jump to the next question.
Yeah. So you guys talk about what's changed in the meta space. So I think one good segue to talk about this change is talking about tracking, which as we all know, that's been something that changed and have a very direct impact on as to what we get from the data that we're getting. So so let's talk about tracking and what's changed and how the brands now need to do to make it work.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I think it just comes back to the main principles of what are you tracking as a business, right? I think if your business is just staring at meta tracking and using that to make all of the decisions, then you're probably in trouble, right? And in trouble in the sense of, just understanding the way the meta tracking works nowadays, right? But I think in general, the healthy way to do this is to understand all general marketing metrics. For example, how much are you spending? How much first-time revenue are you bringing in? How much returning revenue are you bringing in? Measuring your total spend against that and having what we call a blended first-time revenue ROAS. And then from there, breaking it down and reviewing the specific platforms. And then you're able to identify things on a much more holistic level, right? Like there might be times where Meta is under tracking, but the bottom line stays good, right? And if you would have scaled down, then you would feel that effect later on. So understanding how it all kind of comes into play is really important. And secondly, like just understanding what Meta says about its attribution, right? Like whether you're using 1-day click or 7-day click, whether you have 1-day view on, all these things, like they really matter, right? Like those will dramatically change the outcome of what Meta is tracking and how Meta will optimize. And those events can be really different, right? Like a view and a click, they are different events, right? And now you can go on Meta and toggle it yourself so you can see even after running a campaign what those different models would look like. But they obviously come into play when it comes to optimization and what Meta considers a success for that ad. So yeah, just understanding what it is. Obviously, if you're doing something like 1-day click, then you're probably going to be under measuring the impact of your ads, right? There's going to be people that see your ad and buy without clicking. Like obviously that's going to exist. And if you use 7-day click or 1-day view, like there's going to be those outlier stories too. So it's just about how you interpret the data, using that to measure your platform, but then look at how much are we spending as a company? How much revenue are we bringing in? How many new customers are our entire marketing efforts bringing in? And just having this all laid out so it's not just staring at Meta and hoping that, that paints the picture as to where you need to spend, right? But yeah, I mean, I think things have changed, but a well-measured, well-organized company, like we kind of talked about earlier, continues to be resilient, and Meta continues to reward companies that have, invest in branding and invest in their structure and do things correctly to acquire customers and build loyalty.
Sounds good. We talked a lot about data, and now that we're tapping into how complicated and sometimes hard can be to keep good track of that data, should we always trust Meta data, or should we go to other metrics like ROAS, lifetime value, I don't know, different kinds of metrics to get better understanding of the bigger picture, if you will? call it that. But yeah, thoughts on that?
Do you want to take it out or do you want me to take it?
You can go ahead. Take the next one.
All right. So yeah, I mean, I would say, can you still trust metadata, or should I go to strictly blended ROAS? I think, yeah, I mean, I think it's all about having a view on the entire picture. I think that's the most important part, or maybe even the biggest takeaway of this podcast, right? It's have a clear picture of what's going on in your business, track your KPIs, understand where where your business stands. And within that, meta plays a role, right? Like within all the data you should look at, which includes, first time revenue, returning revenue, churn, AOV. Those are kind of your top high level data points. You should have your metadata points, right? Which within that attribution model, which we talked about in the earlier question, plays a huge role. But absolutely, metadata is reliable, and you should look at all these key metrics and how they play into your entire marketing funnel, right? Like we look at CTR, CPM, cost per purchase. We were just talking about 1-day view, 7-day click, 1-day click. We use all of these metrics every day, right? When we review what's going on, but we use them next to all of our entire marketing metrics so we can understand the true impact of our ads. And yeah, I would say like, Alan, like, this firsthand, like if you turn off ads just because of metadata, you're probably doing it wrong, right? And you're not probably doing it wrong. You're absolutely doing it wrong. So yeah, you have to look at the entire picture, but metadata plays a huge role within that entire picture.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think meta gives you the information needed to drive your campaigns in the right direction. But from a business standpoint, you got to be tracking and you got to know, what your goals are from a revenue and overall standpoint as well. But we definitely do use metadata to help us further and execute and scale meta campaigns, right? So I'd love to jump into the next question. We only have 45 minutes, so Dan, you can kind of kick off that.
Yeah. So another question that we get is what to do with meta when it's not working. So if meta is struggling, why are some brands still crushing it in that space?
Yeah, I mean, there's like a multitude of reasons why meta may not be working. I think some of the things that I've seen recently is the way meta ad campaigns are ran. I think people are less intentional with what funnels they're actually putting together. Sending traffic to landing pages or product pages that actually don't resonate with like the funnels that they're trying to put together. And ultimately, the way that meta's going, it wants you to leverage the AI within the tool. Meta learns, just as any other kind of AI tool learns. And if you're giving indirect or confusing angles, you're confusing your pixel and it's reaching people who are not actually buyers. So I think there's two things. There's reaching the right people, and then there's giving them something that they want and that they want now. So, that you have your offer testing, you have your, conversion rate, kind of CRO focused landing pages and product pages that have been tested and optimized by you. What do people want to see? In CPG, they want to see bundles. They want to get a better deal if they buy like, a bigger dose. A lot of the times these CPG products are things that people are going to consume and they know that they're going to consume them. So giving them an opportunity to buy more and save is like a very straightforward way to increase that conversion rate, because if your conversion rate falls, your entire meta funnel falls as well. So, some takeaways and actionable items that you can take from this is making sure that your funnels are as intentional as possible. If you're reaching a certain demographic of people, give them what that person wants individually. For example, I kind of run into this a lot in the supplement space. When it comes to a potential client says, my product is for all these people. They say, it's for immunity, it's for cold and flu season, but it's also for hair and nails. And it's right. So they're talking about all these use cases of their product in which if you're reaching one of those people, they don't want to see the other messaging because you're now losing them in your funnel. You want to break that down in a meta structure that isolates to the person who you're actually trying to reach. And you want to show them not only an ad, but a landing destination that matches the problem and solution that they're looking for at that time. For example, in a cooking niche or something like that, people buy products, consumable food items, or let's just say keto or protein focused. We've worked with some peanut butters and things like that are, on the shelf of like a healthier for you grocery store. Each person has their own story as to why they buy products like that and healthier alternatives. So you want to make sure that you're being intentional with why you're reaching that person and explaining how you do meet their needs, but also give them an opportunity to buy and try your product through an amazing offer, whether that be buy more and save functionality, or maybe it's a buying opportunity, like a first-time customer offer that just allows somebody to think, I resonate with this so much that I'm going to give this brand a shot. I think that's where people are missing. They're setting up campaigns on Meta that are reaching the wrong people because they're structured improperly, and then they're feeding the wrong messages to these people. Therefore, who's going to buy that? You're not resonating with the audience that you're going after, and you're not even reaching the audience in the first place, which then kind of further, backs up the point of like testing is more important on Meta now. Structuring campaigns in a way where you're actually isolating in that way is important. You need a marketing strategy that allows for that, which is why I think it's different to when people, how people used to run Meta ads in the past.
Sounds good. So that leads me to our next question, and I think it's you already talked about having the right offer for the right audience, but let's talk more about performance in this case. So the question we get is, we tried Meta ads and it didn't work. Are we the problem? And let's talk about it from like a performance standpoint, identifying where are our areas of opportunity. Please let me know how to identify those and the next steps that a person should take.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fair point. I think first of all, you need to understand every single metric within your funnel, from click-through rate to what your CPM is, to what your conversion rate on each landing destination is. If you understand this, you can start to identify where the drop-off is. The answer to this is going to be testing, right? A testing protocol that allows you to test multiple angles and audit those angles like a hawk, until you start finding what resonates with your customer. A lot of the times with our clients, we start to build a gold mine of offers that work for the brand. And then we can strategically place them around the year to make buying opportunities available for the customers on the other end. So that's something that we do as an agency. We'd love to talk to you about it if you're a brand on the other end that's kind of struggling with this at this time. And we can share our creative testing protocol as well as our offer testing protocol, which we deploy strategically to start to find some of those pockets. So that would be my answer to knowing, is this a business thing or a kind of marketing fundamental? It can be both, but you need to have, if your marketing's in check in the metrics on the ad account make sense, then we'll start to look at like things like AOV, lifetime value, et cetera, to start to diagnose why we may not be scaling. But from an agency side, we usually set up all those metrics initially at the beginning of a client relationship. We set every single metric, not only on the ad account, but also on the business side, like AOV goals. How do we make that happen with a product page that shows 2, 4, 6, and 8 packs? Does that make it happen? Are people actually going to the 4 and 6 pack? If not, let's increase the discount there because it's going to get us to our AOV goal, which then validates our return on ad spend. And it brings it to the 1.5 or 2 on first-time customer acquisition that we're looking for, right? So you need to put together these formulas with your marketing director or with your agency, so that then you can actually hit the meta goals that you're looking for. So it's a blend of both.
So the next question that we get is, what should we be actually running right now from a content standpoint? So what formats should we be running, angles, structures, and also let's touch on UGC and its importance, if it's important. So yeah, Dirk, do you want to?
Yeah, totally. I would say if your ad account, if all the ads in your ad account look really similar and, you know, kind of follow the same tone of voice and all that, honestly, you're probably doing it wrong. We're at a day and age where the battle for attention is so big when it comes to capturing the screen time of the target users, that we, as an agency, we're almost like, if you have an idea, then we're going to test it. And that's kind of the approach we have when it comes to creating content. And then we find ways to match the brand voice and do everything else. And I think an example of this would be, for example, like if you're selling a supplement, and you know your target audience consumes podcast style content, then you should be creating podcast style content. And a lot of these brands that are stuck on like pure branded product photography, like heavily produced content, miss a lot of these opportunities, right? And it comes to like, okay, if we are going after this podcast audience, what other content can we surround it with? And a lot of times it is taking those Hail Marys and creating those, you know, whether it's like a in Instagram screenshot or a SMS like message screenshot or a screenshot of your notes app. There's all these different concepts and things that are just, it's all about just taking the shot and having a structure to test all these concepts quickly.
Totally. Okay, so moving on to our next one, and this is something that we hear constantly about brands taking a stab at Facebook, Meta, and not working. So they're starting to assess different platforms such as TikTok, Google. So when they're there, when is the right time to start considering moving budgets from Meta to different platforms? Is it TikTok just like the right platform? Is it just a hype? Please go on.
Yeah, to answer that question, I think it's not just the hype. Like I think TikTok has scalability and it has profitable funnels for certain brands. So I'd say like it's not a solution to a broken funnel. It's an addition. Like that's the way I like to talk about it. If you gave me a brand new brand, I would still recommend Meta first. Meta has a really good algorithm that allows you to test and validate funnels in a way that I think is better than other channels. So, right, you know, when it comes to a new brand that's, you know, trying to really validate their offers and potentially even learn from a platform to then deploy CRO in a strategic way or even understand what type of creative resonates, Meta, like you have such a powerful engine that is proven to do that. So I usually always start there. From a scalability standpoint, of course, you can grab that learning, bolt it onto TikTok. I'd say Google's a little bit different. We kind of put that in a different category that we like to deploy for scalability. In most times, it's usually even at the beginning of a client relationship, which we do a Meta Google approach, because they work really well together and they can really bring a profitable blended return on ad spend. TikTok, I see next to Meta. You know, at what point does it make sense to do the jump? In no cases have I seen it not working on Meta, somebody jumping to TikTok and it working. I would always say it's a gradual transition to increase your brand awareness and your exposure to a market, right? But from a testing standpoint, I usually say if you're not profitable and scaling on Meta, don't go yet. Learn and listen and get to a point where you feel confident enough to make that jump and to start to increase your ad spend profitably, right? Your retention needs to be in place. You need to be confident about what happens after that first conversion in order to even get to that type of ad spend level. So I would say that's kind of our approach as an agency. Anything else, Jorge?
No, I would maybe add, in what scenarios have we seen TikTok actually help Meta campaigns? And I would say that, you know, it sometimes builds that content engine. Like TikTok relies on dropping a lot of content and it forces a lot of these brands to start creating content in a very like process driven way, which then they can replicate that to make their meta ads better. So I would say a lot of times as you're having this realization of like meta ads isn't for us, should we be looking at a different channel? I think the answer a lot of times falls back on how do we create a better content engine to make our meta ads actually work and actually speak to our target audience. So yeah, kind of, going into a different platform like TikTok, it's almost like amplifying the workload. When if you just kind of focus on one channel, you're going to find a better chance of success, assuming that that your customers live on these platforms.
Sounds good. Al, you touched on retention a couple minutes back. So that brings us to our next question is retention strategy. Are most brands neglecting it? And in that sense, all brands are spending to acquire customers, but are they falling short in retaining them? Like, what's the thought there?
Mm-hmm. I would say most brands are prioritizing, like they're so hyper focused on their paid metrics that they do start to forget about their retention strategies and kind of put that second. I've seen a lot of brands that don't even consider lifetime value, and they think about and they never start to scale. They almost drown on a ship that could have scaled, right? Because they're so hyper focused on ROAS when that's not giving you a full picture of what your store is going to look like in 12 months if you ran it properly, right? So I think, yes, the brands that are prioritizing loyalty programs that actually have a connection with their customers, and that actually have a experience in which the customer on the other end enjoys the product long term. In supplements, it's very straightforward because you run out and you order the next dose, right? And it's something that you enjoy a lot. In food, it's the same. If you're ordering a tortilla that you love and that's healthier for you and you're not going to go to an alternative, you're going to stay there. But you need to make sure that you're communicating as a brand why they should stick on. It's very straightforward to kind of bolt on a subscription program and not really care about your customer further than that, right? You want to give opportunities for them to come back and buy, whether that be emails of new recipes, emails of, educational, content further than the first conversion. That increases your lifetime value. With loyalty programs, we have brands that communicate on both ends. Like email can be a one-sided communication in which you're just kind of shoving things down your customer's throat, or it can be a two-sided experience in which a customer can say, "Hey, I want to pause for 2 weeks because I'm going on a trip," and a brand allows that, and then they continue their subscription program, right? So I would say retention is everything, especially in the clients that we work with, which are a lot of healthier for you type of products. You need to kind of have this dialed and really understand your retention metrics in order to be able to scale and keep customers around and build a community. We see a lot of brands build a community around it and give a energy towards the product in which if you take X product, you also fall into a category of X, Y, and Z, which that is built through a brand. It doesn't happen through magic. It happens through proper marketing and education and good engaging experience within your entire funnel. So anything else to add to that, Jorge?
No, I would just add, I think when it comes to adding LTV, it's almost easier to double your revenue by improving your LTV than it is through focusing on new customer acquisition, right? There's more actionable things you can do that happen quicker. And some of those are we've had a lot of success with SMS and doing a post-delivery check-in where after the product gets delivered to the customer, a customer support style SMS, just kind of making sure that if they're on track with their delivery. And this sometimes just reminds them to consume the product, gives them an additional touch point to the brand, just to feel a little bit extra connected. And then another one would be gift with purchase. for example, in the tortilla example, a lot of times people put them in the freezer and forget about them. And, you have to remind your users to consume the product in clever ways that builds loyalty. And gift with purchases that in that category would be like a tortilla warmer, for example, is something that's going to remind someone that the product's not out and to remind them to take it out of the freezer. Or we had another case study that was with a smoothie company that they did a blender gift with purchase. And they had a huge problem with retention. As soon as they added the blender, all of a sudden, people are they have a reminder to take it out of the freezer and use the product quicker. So we encourage that second purchase to happen faster, right? So yeah, never overlook your LTV. It's probably a faster way to double your revenue than looking at new revenue only. And when you figure them both out together, that's your ticket to scaling.
Sounds good. Let's pivot back to Meta. So Al mentioned a two-way approach where it can be complementary to other platforms. And the question now is, should Meta just be top of funnel now, or can it still be seen as a profitable retention or even cold acquisition platform still?
Yeah, I can touch on this one. I mean, so should Meta just be top of funnel? I think it truly relies, or it comes down to like your business model, right? Like whether you're service-based or you're e-commerce, whether you're a recurring purchase or something someone would consume monthly or routinely, or you're more of a one-time purchase product, and understanding like what you're trying to get the platform to do, right? Like, for example, if you're a service-based business and you're doing your retention through email, through SMS, through phone call, and that's how you're keeping your customers in your CRM active, then you should focus your acquisition efforts on first time only, right? Or if you're a subscription e-commerce and you want to focus it on acquisition only, then you should have the proper exclusions within Meta and focus it on top of funnel only, right? But in a lot of other categories, just because someone bought once, that doesn't mean you own the customer at all. I mean, I bought from brands 3 months ago that I'm never going to buy from again. And this happens more and more. And, it's more and more common with all the competition out there. So it just depends on your model. I think a lot of brands are doing the mistake of just excluding because they don't really, because they think that's what they should be doing, and just focusing Meta on new customers only because they think that's what's going to move the needle. But same in that example, right? Like I just bought candles from another company. And unless I'm getting reminders to buy it again, like it's just fair game, right? Like if I go to Google or Amazon, I'm going to be marketed to from so many brands. So excluding it is actually going to lose a ton of revenue, right? So yeah, it's all about having the right metrics, understanding what you're trying to do, and having the right goals for these platforms. And yeah, like we do have clients that totally run it with exclusions, focusing on first time customer only, and then others that are more revenue driven, right? And we have 30 or 90-day exclusions.
All right, sounds good. Let's touch again on creative. So we talked about the importance of UGC and the different formats and having well-nurtured ad setup in terms of creative. But, and this is our next question, is why are my ads fatiguing so fast? What's making them not perform as they used to?
All right, so how often should we be launching creatives to avoid fatigue? I think the answer, it's, paid's almost become like an organic social channel, right? And if you were to ask the question, like, how often should you be creating content for your organic channels? The answer is always, right? Like you should always be creating content to serve the audiences that you're trying to serve your product to. And the reality is, like, trends change, content fatigues, certain niches only have a fine amount of people within them. So you have to be exploring and taking these, as we called them earlier, like Hail Marys. But I would say, like, I think that's, when you think about it that way, it can be a bit intimidating. I think the way we always recommend starting is focusing down on your 2 or 3 best use cases for your product, who's actually buying your product, and then focus on serving them weekly content, right, through your ad account, and just updating that on a weekly basis, leaving all the old stuff in there as well, as it all contributes towards that final conversion. But just having that steady flow of new content, And within that, you'll find these new ads start outperforming the old ones and iterating based on what works, right? But the most important thing is to keep everything categorized by target buyer so that you're creating the right content for the right user, right? And putting it in the right place of the ad account. But I would say a healthy flow now is something between 4 to 8 ads per week, I think is a manageable, amount that we see stores even up to like high 8 figures, right? Some stores are doing that. And it just depends on having very impactful launches that are based on what's working. And I also think the days of like shotgun testing stuff, like having one ad with 10 different variants and they all look pretty similar, but they have little tweaks. That's not what we mean by this. Those days are dead. What we want to be doing is thinking about our target buyer, and surrounding that target buyer with distinct messages, right? But all focused towards that target buyer. And yeah, we talked about earlier, like if you look at your ad account and everything looks pretty similar, kind of like a mood board, you're probably doing it wrong and you're probably not happy with the way things are going. So yeah, this is the answer. The answer is to think about your target buyer and what type of content do they want to consume. And it'll be a combination of all that stuff you can surround them with. And yeah, just take your time with weekly deliveries and build impactful campaigns.
Right. Yeah, I like that kind of description of how we like to handle ad fatigue. And Daniel, I'd love to kind of crush to the next few last questions, as we only have 10 minutes left.
Yep, sounds good. So I'm just gonna skip 10 because it's more on email than Meta. But let's talk about scaling now. So next question is whenever a brand wants to scale, what they encounter is that their ROAS dies, right? So we want to scale, but every time we increase budget, ROAS dies. Why is that, and how can we sort of surf that wave in our advantage?
Yeah, I mean, I think we get this kind of comment or concern from brands that have like unrealistic expectations a lot of the time. Like they possibly have a return on ad spend that's above industry standard or above what their store would actually maintain, because the spend is in a small place. I would say as you scale, you need to be okay with volatility a little bit more. You need to be confident in your lifetime value and in the entire framework of your brand, because then you can kind of rein the storm and you can continue to scale. ROAS improves, it declines in certain times of the year. You need to be okay with that volatility and move within a range that you feel comfortable in. The brands that are over here are due to a lack of spend and due to them just kind of picking up conversions that are already warm or coming from other sources, and they're kind of picking those up. But yeah, I mean, scaling tests every single aspect of your funnel. It'll test your offer, it'll test your creative, it'll exhaust your funnel quicker. So you just need to have a protocol in place that actually maintains scale. And what Jorge was talking about with adding new ad creatives every week, and then really like validating those offers and being able to rely on like what happens after a conversion, which is usually lifetime value / retention marketing. That allows you to actually just be able to continue scaling. So the question always is efficiency or like growth mode more important? I would say on the beginning, you really want to like validate, find efficiency, and find a funnel that can scale. And then you switch to growth mode and you start growing while maintaining that range. That's okay for your business. And if you're at the bottom of the range, yeah, you are going to be stressed. You are going to be looking at it and you want to make sure you don't go under. But you allow for volatility because it's natural. You are not the owner of CPMs on Facebook. They own you. You are advertising on a channel that you have no control over. So you almost need to let go of some of that control and be okay with change, as long as the entire rest of your business metrics look okay. I think the brands that don't understand that part get really stressed about something on the ad channel. They almost build a business off of the ad channel, which is not what you should be doing. You should be looking at your business first and then bolting on the ad channel at the end. Anything else, Jorge?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I think you summarized it really well, but I think where we get this the most is when it's brands that are constantly moving the goalposts, right? I think if it's a brand that is setting the time to understand where profitability is and where meta needs to be to hit those profitability targets, and they stick to the plan, we rarely get this question. But I think what happens is they unlock good performance, and we see this all the time. Like brands unlock good performance and they move the goalposts, which obviously becomes that unable to hold, right, as you scale because you've set unrealistic expectations. So yeah, I think it's on creating the right growth frameworks. I think that's one of the things we spend the most time with before we even run campaigns is understanding just the economics of what we're trying to do and forecasting that out. But yeah, just stick to the plan, right? Like set these KPIs that make sense for your brand. And like you said, work until you achieve them. Once you achieve them, then you can implement scale. But if that target's always moving, it's going to be an uphill battle all the time.
Sounds good. And wrapping it up now, so let's just talk about meta again. Is it still worth it? When does it make sense to double down on meta, and when should we walk away from it?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's an independent question for each brand. Like, when does it make sense to walk away? In my opinion, if your business has a one-time purchase, product, and it also has an average order value that is tremendously low, I would say in that scenario, we rarely run into clients like that. For example, I don't know, there's always scenarios in which you can sell to product 2, product 3, product 4. In consumables, it's a lot easier to increase that lifetime value because it's a consumable. People are going to come back organically. I'm going to say an example, a phone case, right? That's $12. Unless a person's buying, a phone case every 3 months, it's going to be hard to scale. Like you're not going to get a conversion under the $12. That's still going to be profitable, still account for your cost of goods sold and your shipping. It's not going to happen. In that scenario, I would say Amazon's a better channel for you, right? So there are scenarios in which that kind of doesn't work. We usually like to go off if your AOV can be, in the $40 to $60 range through a bundle of some sort, or maybe that's just the cost of your product, you're probably okay. Seeing AOVs in the $100 range is a lot. You're going to have a lot better of an experience on Meta because you can get that conversion and still be comfortable. You could even bundle in that scenario and your AOV is even higher. So that paired with how often do people buy your product? If it's a natural conversion because it's a cosmetic or a consumable or a health supplement, you're going to have just an easier experience with getting customers to come back because they will organically. They just will. They will like your product if you give them an experience worth enjoying and you're confident enough in your store, right? So if you don't have that and you have a single product store, I'm going to give an example which we work with, which is gym. Then we need to be, profitable initially through an average order value that makes sense, right? So maybe we bundle product 2, 3, and 4 together. That then pushes us up into the plus 100 price point, which is now an AOV that's profitable for a $30 conversion. And on month 3, we want to sell them the next part of their home gym, right? So what is that? Is that another set? Is that an upgrade to their gym, etc.? But we want to make sure that we're constantly bringing in new buying opportunities. If your product is a one-time purchase item, if not, then there's probably a better platform for you, like Amazon, in which you're kind of relying on a search engine. Google Shopping has been big for single product stores that we've worked with because you can kind of reach keyword buyers similar to an Amazon channel in which somebody looks it up, they want to buy it today. In Google Shopping, you can have a similar behavior. Somebody looks it up, they want to buy it today, right? So that might be the right route for a single purchase product. But for Meta, I'm going to stick on what we kind of spoke about earlier. Anything additionally to add there, Jorge?
No, I would just say that's such a good point on how Google Shopping is just so underlooked right now. It feels like everybody's either a diehard PPC fan or a Performance Max like promoter. But yeah, like shopping has been the backbone of so many of the stores that we've worked with. But yeah, when we audit all these stores, it's always like they just shrug it under that umbrella of like either PMax or just like we don't mess with that sort of placement.
Sounds good. Okay, last item, last question. So, if you had 30 seconds to advise a direct-to-consumer founder spending between 10 and 50K a month on ads and feeling stuck, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I mean, my 30-second advice would be plan your growth in a way in which you're reaching customers intentionally. The ad strategy kind of comes second after that, right? So think about the pillars in which there are different demographics that will consume your products, different angles, different offers, different people with different problem solutions, right? Although your product may be able to suit all of these people, you got to structure your growth in a way in which that's even possible, right? So I would say that's kind of my advice towards like where to go from here. It's really isolating that and then allowing the ad channel to do the heavy lifting for you with the right direction and with giving it the information that it needs in order to be able to then find that buyer. And then your conversion rate holds up because you have such a good intentional offer for the right person who's currently dealing with that problem, and you are the solution to it. When you see that type of funnel be put together, it works. It's scalable. Then you fall on retention, and you can scale your store in a way which is more predictable, and you kind of start to eliminate that volatility because you're standing on multiple funnels for multiple different people. But you need to structure it correctly. This structured properly will lead to dismal results. So if you want to learn more about kind of how we structure things, you can always email us. And we do 45-minute free consultations, and we kind of draw this out for you without any commitment. But yeah, other than that, I would say that's my advice to kind of round off for today. What about you, Jorge?
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I mean, I think I've always been the more like analytical side of things. So the way I like to see it is just a real clear view of what's going on. So yeah, if you're like spending 10 to 50 grand a month and you don't really know like what's wrong to scale, and you're like, oh, like maybe it's my Facebook ads, like maybe we're not running them the right way. What we usually do, like before we even like set a strategy, is just like download your KPIs for the last like 3 or 4 months, get your averages, benchmark them. Like, how's your traffic look? How's your conversion rate look? How does your, all these different steps, add to cart rate, checkout rate, your CPMs, all these different metrics, how do they look over the last 4 months, and where should they be? And it'll just allow you to be a little bit more tactical with what your next steps are. So yeah, I think benchmarking, setting goals, moving towards those goals with action items that are like clear, just having that right engine is what's going to get you out of that 10 to 50K a month zone. But yeah, I mean, like Alan said, we do this all the time. If you guys want a no commitment consultation where we review KPIs and talk about this sort of language, then yeah, go ahead and book that call, and we'd be happy to talk strategy with you guys and help figure out what the best next moves are.
Yeah, appreciate everybody. If you got to this point in the video, we try to make it as actionable as possible, considering like real feedback and real comments that we get from founders all the time. We audit about 3 to 4 new businesses per week, so we really understand the pain points, and we don't take on any client. We try to take on clients that we can scale with and have a growth mindset when it comes to actually putting together profitable and scalable formulas, right? So a lot of the times that's not solely on Meta, which is why we're a solution that covers everything, and we can advise on everything because that's what's needed in 2025 to make these funnels work. So appreciate everybody for staying until this point. As we mentioned, we do that 45-minute free consultation to anybody interested. I'll include the link down below. Just click on it and schedule a call with us. And other than that, we'll see you next week. This is going to be a weekly occurrence. So any questions that you guys have, always DM us and we'll touch on it next time. Thank you, and we'll talk to you next week.